Simulcast. Here we go. Now I'm going to go to YouTube. Okay.
You got it?
Good.
Did you color your hair?
I did. Well, I went to a trans barber and got my hair cut, and then I came home and I dyed it. I bleached it, didn't I? I bleached it. Do you like it?
Yeah. How was your experience there? Maybe that's a conversation off the,
Good,
live
yeah,
broadcast. But
yeah. It was good. It was good because no one misgendered me, so that was pretty exciting. And they said, actually, when I went in, they said, "Oh, it's your first time," and I was telling them about going to the hairdressers and people always being like, "Oh, you're a new woman" or whatever. And they said that you were the second person that came in that day saying that the hairdressers are such a misgendering place. So yeah. So anyway, welcome to the show today, which we're talking about toxic food. And the show is Death to Diets. What is Death to Diets, Summer Inanen?
It is a series that we are doing together where we explore diet culture nonsense, and we are not here to shame people who diet. Rather, we are here to look at the culture of dieting and the problematic elements of that and its intersection with body image and lots of other things. And do you want to do a personal intro first?
Yeah, so my name is Vinny Welsby, they, them. I am a fat non-binary incredible human that teaches about fat phobia, weight bias, healthism, and I'm friends with Summer. Yeah, that's me. What about you, Summer?
I'm Summer Inanen, she, her. I am a professionally trained life coach. I specialize in helping people with body image, self-worth, and confidence. And I am friends with Vinny.
Thank you. You are friends. Today, we're going to be talking about quote unquote toxic food, and there's going to be a big trigger warning for this episode because we're actually going to be talking about food, beliefs around food and beliefs around food addiction, sugar addiction, mentioning what someone eats in a day. We're going to be actually mentioning quantities and what they eat. And that's going to be in the first section. And then in your section, you're going to read.
Yeah, there's some sound bites from a particular article that was called "Toxic Food," that may be, like, just, if you're feeling sensitive or any, we're going to be dissecting it. But when we talk about some of the quotes that are in the article, I would say that some of that stuff, we're just going to put a content warning ahead if you're sensitive to talk about, like the O word or stuff, that implies that the amount of food you eat is going to make your body larger and things like that. So, but we're going to be smashing it all apart. So hopefully you'll be fine, but just getting a content warning before that too.
Excellent. And the reason why we decided to do this episode is quite timely, is that I very excitedly started watching Netflix, as I do 27 hours a day of my life. I started watching JVN, Jonathan Van Ness's new show called Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness. JVN, they are from Queer Eye, which is another show. And you've not seen it, Summer. I can't believe it. There's like a big 5 seasons.
I watched Queer Eye like back in the 90s or when it first came out, but I haven't not in the last, not since that first iteration of it. So JVN, although I know who they are, if you were to show me a picture, I'd be like, okay, I recognize that face. Not familiar, don't follow, yeah.
So you're lucky you didn't have to experience this shit that I'm about to share today, which is
tell me about it.
Oh my goodness. So JVN is a non-binary queer hairdresser, fabulous human, excited with the new show. The new show first started talking about bugs was the first episode. The next episode was gender hair, and then gender. And it was like so kind of deconstructing all of these different ideas and racism and all this stuff. And then the next episode was titled, Why Do I Love Snacks So Much? And I thought this would be like an ode to like a letter to snacks and why it's so wonderful. So I was like, oh, great. We're going to deconstruct the idea around snacks and why we love them and why they're great. And in the beginning of the episode, the first phrase that piqued my kind of red flag waving going off was the phrase processed foods. JVN said processed foods, and I was like, okay, well, keep watching. This is not sounding good so far. But then they went to a donut factory, and JVN was like, oh my God, this is amazing, enjoying eating the donuts. It was cool and magical. Then they actually saw someone else, but then the big chunk of the program was JVN meeting a stony-faced, thin, white, quote, food addiction expert. And as soon as I saw this person on the screen with their title, and she was just so miserable as well. Like, you know, I'm here to judge you. Come on the screen. I was like, oh shit. And even that title, Hey Summer, food addiction expert. What would that make you?
Well, that maybe she's hungry.
Yeah.
That's why.
She's fucking hungry.
That maybe was why she came on kind of mean. I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm telling you, she is hungry as shit, is what she, like, oh my God. And so anyway, the first thing she says, Jonathan, share what you typically eat in a day. And so Jonathan pulls out from a bag all of the things that they eat in a day. And so skip ahead a couple of minutes here because I'm gonna share what JVN eats. So for breakfast, he has coffee, is what he said. And then at lunchtime, he has a small salad. And then at dinner time, he has this small vegan pizza. And then he has some candy, some sweet things. So he says, I have a Pop-Tart, a Gusher, I don't know what that is, and an Oreo. So that is what JVN says that they eat in a day. Now, Summer, if someone told you that that's what they eat in a typical day, what would your reaction be?
How are you feeling? Because that to me sounds like less food than my toddler eats. And I would be absolutely starving if I ate that. And I know that this person is a grown-ass adult. So my guess would be that they're probably starving.
Yes. And actually, I forgot to mention, JVN did share that he has a chocolate-covered pretzel, and he offered one to stony-faced food addiction expert, and she looked like he had just offered her a steaming pile of shit. And she was like, no, I'm okay, I'm fine right now. You know, like, put those disgusting yogurt-covered pretzels away, you beast. How dare you offer me a pretzel? I think, though, secretly she was probably like, oh, fucking hell. Oh, my God, a pretzel's so good. Yeah, so my reaction, too, was like, holy shit, JVN, you must be fucking starving. All of the work that you do, running around the world, being fabulous, working so hard, making these TV shows, and that's all you're eating. And then you're having like coffee for breakfast, which is, I mean, and then you're confused as to why that you might eat sweet things in the evening. I mean, to you and I, Summer, it seems really clear that that Jonathan is not eating enough, and because of that, because he says he struggles with binge eating, is that he is eating more during the evening because he's not eating enough and he's restricted so much throughout the day. So to me, it seems really clear what needs to happen here.
It's super, yeah. I mean, it's super obvious. I feel like any nutrition expert, like even if they're kind of enmeshed in diet culture, like would still see that there's like an immense lack of caloric consumption happening for the majority of the day, and therefore, you know, that's problematic in and of itself. So, yeah, like I mean, even when in my dieting days, I would probably be like, that's not like you're not eating. So, I mean, it's extremely obvious to me now, but I mean, like the fact that he's working with like, you know, a professional and they're not identifying that, to me just seems so hugely problematic. And you think about all the people watching this show and then thinking, well, I must have a problem. You know, or like I should be trying to eat coffee for breakfast only, or, you know, all this other crap. Like, I know enough about JVN to know that they're a pretty huge influence, or like have a pretty huge influence, right? Like a massive following. A lot of people look up to them. And so to know that, you know, other people are going to see this and potentially then pathologize themselves as being, you know, binge eaters or addicted to food, when what is just happening is like a normal reaction to restriction, like a normal reaction. Yeah.
Yes. And so what happens is what she says is very kind of trying not to judge him too much for eating all of this quote unquote bad food. She says, so I think we can talk about some of the problems coming from this type of diet. And I'm thinking, okay, come on, like this is your last chance. This is your chance to say, you're not eating enough. Like this totally makes sense why you think you might be, addicted to sugar or whatever. And she goes on to say, because my concern is that eating a diet like this is going to catch up to you. I hate that whole fucking, it's going to catch up to you. Like there's, like this disease is coming to get you if you eat an Oreo, like it's gonna stalk you down. You might not feel it right now, but in the future you better watch out, because if you eat an Oreo now, you're gonna die, basically. So anyway, she says it's gonna catch up to you. I'm worried about what you might look like on the inside after eating like this. Ugh, I just fucking inside.
Well, I think because like JVN's really thin, right? Like, aren't they really skinny? Like,
no, they're not very. They're just straight sized.
Okay, but nonetheless, if they were fat, what do you think this person's response would have been, instead of just like, there's something wrong on the inside, right?
Yeah, inside and outside, because you're fat. Clearly, it's catching up. Yeah. So, continuing, she said, "What you just showed me is sending you down the path of having some serious health problems later on. A lot of this food is bringing you down. It's tough. A lot of people in this in this country are in an abusive relationship with sugar. We're finding this O-word crisis in our country, where more than half of the country is struggling with being O-word or O-word. And a lot of that is tied back to the things that we are seeing here: sugar-rich and processed food. You've developed a dependency on these foods."
What? Like, what? Oh my God, it's so wrong.
Everything
it's comical.
Everything. Like, even a little thing like half of people are struggling with being fat. Bitch, I ain't struggling with being fat. I'm fucking out here being fat and fabulous. Ain't no struggle here with me being fat. Just like even basic things like that, and saying you have developed a dependency on these foods.
No, you're hungry. Like, and these foods provide quick energy, and so you naturally gravitate towards them when you're hungry. Like, that's basic physiology.
And so Jonathan said, No, those words. I had to go to rehab before for those words. These feel like such big words. And so even JVN is like, oh shit, this sounds serious. And then this woman is like, it is serious. And then compared him eating food and sugar to drugs and alcohol. And then JVN confessed very shamefully that he thinks that he is a sugar addict. And my heart was just breaking. And by the way, when I first watched this episode, I got to the bit where she started saying the O words, and I turned that shit off, and I got straight on Instagram being like, what the fuck? Who is this? Oh my God. And so for the audience, I went back and watched it again and watched the whole thing and wrote down exactly what this motherfucking stupid food addict expert wrote down. So you're welcome. I'm traumatizing myself by looking at that shit.
Thank you for your service.
I know. You're welcome. The nutritionist then said that the sugar industry is tricking JVN because sugar masks the bitter taste from chemical additives and dyes and other things that are in processed food. And then JVN did this kind of side segment on chemicals, how chemicals have long names, and some chemicals are used in other processes outside of food and are also used in making food. And so if a chemical is used in one process, therefore it can't be used in food making because that means it's toxic. And science tells us if you can't spell or pronounce a word, it means that it's toxic. Isn't that true, Summer? Is that facts?
You know, I don't even think that they taught us that in nutrition school.
Really? Is that bullshit? You didn't learn it in nutrition school?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember, but I feel like that's probably more of a literacy issue than like a food issue.
It's just it's one of the things like, oh, this food, it's got so many names that I can't pronounce, therefore it's bad for you. Well, no. And saying it has chemicals. Well, yes, because every fucking thing is a chemical, you donkey. Like, come on now. Like, oh my goodness. So a lot of food shaming there.
Well, and I think the issue is just that they like laser in on one tiny piece of like this massive puzzle of health, and it's like if that focus was the issue, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like it's a red herring for everything. It's like, let's just blame like the chemical in chemicals in our food versus like really looking at the big picture, and what is really contributing to people's, you know, health ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is totally. It's a red herring. Yeah. And then actually someone said to me that this was really difficult and I mentioned it to you, is that this food addict expert brought out pictures of a brain and saying like, this is what a brain looks like on sugar. And she said, quote, "You're always chasing that high like a drug addict," end quote. And that if you eat too much sugar, you're going to have an abnormal brain. Then she shows a brain which of someone who has used cocaine and sugar next to each other. And she said that this eating sugar is a brain condition. And so because she brought out images of brains, that's so convincing, right? It's so convincing. Well, oh my God, look, it's clear as day. Someone has used cocaine and the dopamine is lighting up just the way it does when someone has eaten sugar. But what they don't show is another slide which shows the brain when you are hugging a kitten, the brain when you see someone that you love, the brain when you have a really enjoyable shit. Because guess what? It lights up too. It's our pleasure. It's, you know, what's causing us pleasure. It lights up. And so they don't show all the other stuff. They just show the cocaine to stigmatize people who might have addiction issues and to stigmatize people who eat sugar, which is, you know, we need it to live. It's just,
And like, you know, I mean, you know how I feel about this, and you know, we both know how that whole sugar addiction thing has been, you know, dismantled and broken down and is, you know, not really a thing. But what has your experience been with clients and personally around this? Because I can speak to that too.
oh my goodness, that is such a good question, because telling someone that sugar addiction doesn't exist or food addiction doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, because your experience, my experience, your as in people in the world experience, is that they are addicted. And I was 100% sure that I was addicted to food because I could not stop thinking about it. It's all I ever wanted. And I was really hyper focused on it. But why might that be, Summer?
Well, could it be that were you restricting things, or did you feel like those foods were bad or forbidden?
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what was going on.
I know.
You see that with clients, don't you, a lot?
Yeah, and myself. I mean, over and over and over and over and over. Like, I used to be the type of person that was like eating cake from the pan, standing in my fridge. Like, why can't I stop? Like, I have no control. Like, I'm addicted to this. And then when I started feeding myself like a grown-ass woman, I just don't like, sometimes I forget about food, like in the fridge. You know, cake is just cake. Like, I'll have some if I want it. And a lot of the time I'm just like, I don't feel like it because I am fed and I know that I can have it anytime I want. And I don't believe it's bad. And I've done enough like unlearning on like all this bullshit that we're supposed to look at food as if it's toxic and forbidden. And it's just neutral. Like, food is just food. There's no morally, you know, superior foods. It's really more about, you know, having a healthy relationship with it. And all of this stuff is driven by, you know, our culture's obsession with, you know, being thinner and like watching your weight, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've never not seen this. I've never had a client come to me and still be like, I can't stop eating sugar. Every time it's like, once the foods become, you know, once the food is no longer off limits, I think is what I'm trying to say, then they get to a point where it's just not a big deal and they will forget about it or have one bite of it or eat a lot of it because they want it and enjoy it and maybe get a tummy ache sometimes. But like, that's the extent of it.
Yeah, exactly. And the big way that we can know that it's not an addiction is that when you increase your exposure to an actual addictive substance, your symptoms increase. Whereas with food or sugar, if you increase your exposure, the symptoms decrease. And so what we need to be doing is the opposite, is allowing ourselves the sugar, the food, whatever it is that we are feeling like we are addicted to. And then lo and behold, turns out we weren't addicted. We were just obsessed because we denied ourselves so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a bunch of people called out, you know, JVN, just kind of just speaking to the problematic nature of the episode, especially as it like really didn't fit it with the rest of the sort of series that you're talking about, right? And they responded, didn't they?
Yeah. And just to kind of wrap up on what happened at the end of the episode is the solution to this addiction that he has is to eat only organic cookies, which has sugar in the form of. Yep.
What's the difference?
Yeah, because the sugar is in the form of a syrup and not white sugar, which apparently is going to.
Your body doesn't know the difference.
And also these cookies are good because they don't have anything in there that you can't pronounce. So that's going to help with the sugar addiction, apparently. And this says nothing about, like, this is so fucked. Like, that's the thing to do, is eat an organic cookie. which of course are going to be like $75 per cookie. So what about if you can't afford to eat organic cookies? So, and you have a quote unquote food addiction, well, sorry, you're fucked, you know? And then the episode ends with JVN being at the fridge, opening it, closing it, debating about having something to eat or not. And then a cartoon mouse saying, are you thirsty, perhaps, instead of being hungry? And then the resolution is that JVN decides to have half an Oreo cookie and gives the other half to the mouse. And I thought that was pretty funny because half an Oreo cookie, when really, you know, they wanted to eat something more, like that is fit for a mouse, you know, not a human being busy doing life, you know, like you need to eat some more. So JVN actually responded to Moxie Mind, because Moxie Mind made a post saying, this is fat phobia. And JVN said, hi loves, I'm sorry. As someone who is in recovery, I'm learning as I go. It's part of why I explored this in this series. I'm never done with learning on a subject and I'm always going to want to do more. As we discuss in the episode, we have to take the shame and stigma out of this conversation and emphasize it's not the individual's fault, but an industry-wide system that needs so much healing. So basically he's saying it's not your fault that you might be a sugar addict, it's the system. There are so many ways to heal and learn. I'm not perfect and I'm learning and sharing as I go. I could always do better, but as they say, people are doing the best they can with what they know. I've been struggling with binge eating my entire life and I want to have a conversation about it, and I'm certainly not done talking about it. I'm excited to keep learning and growing around this topic. Heart, love and light. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, like at least they responded, and I mean, people will hear what they want to hear when they're ready, and I don't think that you can necessarily force that on people. But it's just unfortunate that a lot of other people probably were impacted as a result of that episode, because it just further reinforces this belief that, you know, there's something wrong with them and they just need like a different meal plan to fix the fact that they're just fucking starving mentally and physically, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of people weren't happy with that response. And, you know, because, you know, JVN's not saying I fucked up. You're absolutely right. I'm going to learn from fat non-binary people. It sounds like they still believe that they are a food addict, or, you know,
you know, like, how do you, I think they're going to have their own awakening at whatever time is right for them. I don't think you can exactly. Like, I mean, you and I both know you can't convince someone if they don't want to hear it. Yeah. And I think it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to convince when there's probably some level of, you know, fat phobia inside about like, you know, I can't, like, this must be an issue, right? Because the notion of just being able to eat what I want is probably too scary because of the fat phobic beliefs.
Yeah. So I sent JVN a DM saying, oh, hey, if you want me to be like, you know, a fat person on your show, then let me know. So I'm shooting my shot. Nothing probably will happen, obviously, because they probably don't check their DMs. But, you know, you never know.
You never know. They responded to the comments, so you just never know. But
actually, you know what, Summer? Other people have made posts about it, and JVN has blocked everyone that's made posts about it. So they've only commented on that one, and then the conversation now is shut down.
Oh, well, they got to manage their mental health. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they feel bad. I don't know.
Who knows, right? You know,
who knows? Empathy.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, we've taken up half an hour talking about that mess of a show. Longer than what the show was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So what did you find around this idea of toxic food, Summer?
Well, I found a Newsweek cover that said toxic food that came out, I think, around Christmas or beginning of January, obviously, like kind of coinciding with the whole diet season. And, you know, it really, when you mentioned this episode to me, I was like, oh, like we got to, I mean, it's exactly what was in this article, like essentially just reinforcing all the different things that you've said. And like when I saw it and I read it, I was like, Jesus Christ, like, is it like 1996 called? They want their magazine covers back. Like, why are we still talking about the same thing that clearly is not really like the issue? You know what I mean? Like, it's not again, it's like, it's the red herring, right? And so the article really talks about how, ultra processed foods, that's the sort of, label that they've given them, are things that, big food, the system, which I used to work for. I don't remember ever being in a meeting room where people were scheming about like, we got to get people to eat more. Like, you know what I mean? So
You clearly did, Tom. I don't lie. You were there being like, these motherfuckers.
You're like, yeah, like capitalism rampant. Of course they care about profits. Of course it's all about the shareholders. Of course it's all about sales. But I think this idea that there's like these evil like masters behind it trying to, I'm a little skeptical of the whole thing.
Yeah, because it's like, they're, if you think they're trying to kill people, well, it's not a good idea to kill people, because then who's going to eat your food,
Yeah, it's an easy scapegoat, because I think again, like, the problem is much bigger than just this one little piece of the puzzle. And I'm not saying that, like, the food industry is all great, like there's absolutely issues with the food industry, but they echo basically the same things that you said, that that these ultra processed foods are designed to directly target the vulnerabilities of the human brain, and that they deliver like a quick signal to the brain's reward system. So many people find them as addictive as opioids or nicotine. But then they go on to just call them possibly addictive later on. Oh. So I was like, pick a lane, like, yeah. And really just saying, that this is the problem. People can't stop eating them. And the conclusion is that, whatever these food chemists are doing to food is making people fatter. And obviously they're talking about that in like a very negative sense, because the article opens up with, please don't read this article. Like, it's very heavy on the O word. It's very heavy on the, it's your individual problem that you've gained weight and you're unhealthy. And like, there's so much bullshit in it that, it's like I said, it's like 1996 called, it's like, it's like so outdated in so many different ways. And a couple of things I just wanted to pull out was, they mention that between 1980 and 2000, that's when like obesity began to rocket upwards. Well, do you know what happened in that period of time?
No, tell me what happened in that period of time, Summer.
They altered the BMI to lower it to say, okay, now people over this amount are considered, O and O. Mm-hmm. And therefore, maybe that's why. Do you think maybe that's why it skyrocketed?
I mean, it sounds very convenient, doesn't it? That millions of people overnight suddenly became too fat. Yeah. Yeah, and the skyrocketing number of people when it's just a category has been changed, and arbitrarily, like the fact that the BMI is 20, 25, because it was easy numbers to remember. There's no reason. It's just because it was an easy number to remember. It's the number 5. So science.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, like, who benefited from that change? Pharmaceutical companies peddling weight loss drugs and
diet companies.
Yeah, exactly. And so, the article's quite lengthy, and it really covers a lot of the same stuff that was unfortunately covered in that episode that you watched. And I think that, like, ultimately it's just, there seems to be this issue of like people eating more, but it's like they never factor in the influence of diet culture. They never take into account like any of the other variables that might drive that, like whether or not someone has a living wage, like what other social detriment, I can never say this word properly. Detrimentals, yes, of health. Like what are, what I mean? Like what are these other factors that ultimately have like a greater influence on someone's health? Like what role is that playing in these increases in diseases? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the idea that, really what we need to be looking at is shame, the amount of shame that people are experiencing and the amount of oppression that they're experiencing. But it's so much easier to say, just eat an organic cookie than it is to say, maybe there's an disparity between how Black people experience healthcare between other populations. Because it's so easy to blame the individual and be like, eat an organic cookie, when what the fuck is that going to do?
Yeah, that's elitist health, through and through. That's like the goop world, right?
It's so goopy. Oh my god.
Yeah. Are we just making that a verb now? Like,
yeah. It's so fucking.
Or would that be considered a verb or a noun or an adjective?
Who the fuck?
Adjective, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's a word. It's a word. It's a word now. That shit. Too goopy. And you know what? The thing is, though, when, like with this episode, you see those slides of the brain and then you're like, oh my God, it must be real. And you see this article that's so long, that's so chock-a-block full of linking to this study, linking to this other thing and la, 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 la. Or we all know that it becomes overwhelming. And then you start to think, hang on, is it true? And then you start to really kind of feel that shame and your health is affected. And the thing is, you and I, we're able to dissect this and say, let's look at this study and how many people did they study? And what other factors were going on? And let's look at this evidence and see, actually, it's a load of bullshit. But other people aren't, because, for many different reasons, because this is our job, right? And so to say, if you are seeing this type of stuff and feel like, oh my God, but it might be true, that's a normal reaction to have. And if you have the capacity just to look a little bit into it, or just reach out to someone who does it as a job to, look at this stuff, and to get that reassurance of you're probably not going to die within 3.5 seconds if you eat a Twinkie,
Yeah, well, and I think like a lot of the numbers that they throw out there, like you said, like I know at the beginning they open the article saying, I can't remember what percentage they say, but of Americans are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Well, we talked about in one of the other episodes how like the pre-diabetic is so large, but that doesn't, such a tiny percentage of those people actually end up getting diabetes. And I think like one of the things that also makes me really furious is that like they're putting the onus, I mean, they do put the onus back on, like the food industry to try to do something. Like they suggest doing what they've done with tobacco, which is to like put a warning label on it or change the way that these foods are marketed. But I'm like, that's not going to resolve any of the issues. Like if people can't afford, don't have time for, like fresh, like fruits and vegetables, so to speak, like convenience foods keep people fed. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think that there's like a huge piece of this conversation that gets missed. And people are allowed to eat whatever the fuck they want. Also, like, let people have that autonomy.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and then it's a lot of it is like a lot of well-meaning white people who are like, oh my God, these poor people, they've only got access to a quickie mart or whatever. Is that a thing, or is that just in the symptoms? Anyway, they don't have access to fruits and vegetables, and so what we're going to do is we're going to save them. We're going to go into their community and we're going to give them a farmer's market, and it's just so it's so white. It's just so white people, right, going in there into communities and deciding what we're going to do to fix their problem of disparities in health outcomes is to give them some farmers markets, fruits and vegetables. It's just like, oh my goodness, how patronizing. How about paying people? How about not being racist? How about
access to healthcare?
Like that stuff. No, because we've got a farmers market on Saturday, so we're doing good, so we can feel good about ourselves,
Yes. 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 110%. Yeah. I mean, like, and I don't think like all things are bad or all things are good. Like, I think there's, probably nuance within any of these. Like, yeah, farmers markets, great idea. And like, let's not ignore the bigger, the bigger problems that are really playing a part here. And, specifically as it relates to living wage and access to healthcare and things like that.
Or, just giving money to communities so that they decide what is best for them versus,
So
white British people like me deciding, we know what's best for that community because we don't. So
yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true, right? Yeah.
So to wrap up, we asked our audience about what do they think about the idea that you can be addicted to sugar, and what do they think of when they hear the phrase processed food? So I had a few people thinking processed food meant bad things. And then
actually I got quite a few of those responses. Yeah.
But then I had a lot of people saying, this one comment was, I hate it. Unless you are directly sucking a cow's tit, all food is processed. Yeah. And then someone said, oh, you need to talk about the JVN episode. I said, I am. And in regards to the sugar addiction, it's not evidence-based, and it's a wellness culture lie. Yeah.
I got some people saying they feel that way, and it is real. And so it was, I got kind of across the spectrum. So it wasn't all one or all the other. There's, and that's coming from like, our audiences where, we're really pretty clear on like our messaging. But I think that there's still a lot of fear and misinformation. And hopefully this episode helps people to want to learn more, to want to, debunk some of this stuff, to be able to look at the big picture.
You know who I love that I don't know if you already follow them, Food Science Babe.
I don't follow them, but I know I've heard of their page. Yeah. They're good?
She's still got a little bit of diet stuff to work out. She's not at pro diet or anything, but there's a little bit of but what she does is she debunks all of the, don't eat gluten, don't eat this, da 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 da. So it's really interesting because she's a food scientist.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Yes. I'm trying to limit how many people I follow because it just feels overwhelming to me.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like there's probably a million good pages that I just can't.
I know.
My brain can't take it.
Yeah.
Even though the algorithm probably only shows me the same 4 people over and over.
Right. Totally. So Samantha, where can people find you?
Yeah, so people can find me at thebodyimagecoach.com. That'll take you to my website, and you can find me all over social media as Summer Inanen. And my podcast is Eat the Rules. Where can people find you, Vinny?
They can find me everywhere under Fierce Fatty. My podcast is called Fierce Fatty, website Fierce Fatty, social media Fierce Fatty. And go to my website to get some free stuff. If you want, I'm not the boss of you, do what you want.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks to everyone for being here today. Hope you enjoyed this rich discussion between two highly intelligent individuals who are also extremely good looking.
Right. Oh my God. just looking at my reflection, it turns me on. It's so good. Yeah. All right. See you next